Well, it is a big Saturday in the IPL for a lot of teams. It's not started well for the Delhi Capitals. That's something the Royal Challengers Bangalore know as they enter their clash against the Sunrisers Hyderabad, who themselves are buoyed at the fact that Delhi have slipped up, and Hyderabad, with that very strong net run rate among the teams that could end up on 14, will fancy their chances now against Virat Kohli's side, who have to bounce back after losing to Mumbai Indians, who now look pretty good for a top two finish. It was always going to be hard. Mumbai Indians, defending champions, but Delhi, what a miraculous collapse their season's taken. They're still not out of it. That net run rate's taken a bit of a beating. Keep an eye out on that. And you look at Sunrisers Hyderabad, even though they're seventh at the start of this game, that net run rate now is the second best in the tournament. So there's a lot that we can talk of, and one win could change a lot on that points table. So let's start the discussion on Whirlpool Presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by Dell. Tom Moody is here. He's going to look back at that Delhi-Mumbai game and look ahead to his former side against Bangalore. Ajit Agarkar is here as well as we continue this conversation on this massive weekend. Let's get thoughts on the second game first as we approach Hyderabad and Bangalore. Tom, I'd love your opening thoughts on Sunrisers Hyderabad, who that last win could have done a world for their confidence.
Yeah, look, it certainly, I think it was a critical win for them, also critical confidence booster. You know, they've been up and down all season, haven't really had many things go for them with injuries and a few other issues they've had. But, you know, I suppose the incredible thing about this year's IPL is that apart from Chennai, we're right at the cusp of finals. We're still talking about, you know, teams right down to the seventh position team that can qualify and win the IPL. You wouldn't have thought of it. And, you know, knowing David Warner, he'll have the bit between the teeth, and he'll be absolutely determined to make sure that Sunrisers find a way by hook or crook to get into that top four and to scramble somehow a finals berth.
Something we saw about the Sunrisers in that last game, Ajit, which almost reminded us of the dangerous Sunrisers when Warner comes hard at them early on, when Rashid Khan becomes a nightmare in a big chase. They are a dangerous team right now, aren't they?
Oh, very. I mean, and against a good team as well. The way they played. Saha, you know, no one expected Saha to play that game. Came up the order and, you know, produces that sort of performance. But Warner, I mean, that's the kind of innings that we've seen more than enough through the course of the IPL or in international cricket. And suddenly that he's changed gears in the last couple of games and scored big is a real positive for them. If he can bat as well tonight, you know, they'll fancy their chances to get through that playoffs. And Rashid Khan just does what Rashid Khan does. But I think Warner's performance was a real massive positive for them.
Yeah, what they'd be happy about is Ridhiman Saha makes this team. There's some concerns about his fitness. We'll come to that. Toss news is that the Sunrisers have won the toss. They're going to have a bowl first. Tom, you said yesterday you'd rather be the manager or the coach in the afternoon games, but you'd rather be the manager in the evening games so long as you win the toss and bowl first?
If you tell me I'm winning the toss, I'm turning up. If I'm not winning the toss, I might watch it from the hotel. Only joking, of course. Yeah, look, what we've seen, particularly over the last week or so, how significant that advantage is. Now, it's whether Sunrisers tonight take advantage of that little advantage they've had at the toss, time will only tell, but they'll be absolutely over the moon and relieved, particularly given it's such a critical game for them, that, you know, they're one step forward in the right direction. They certainly haven't won the game, but they're certainly one step forward. You know, in my view, when dew does set in, depending on the ground size, we're talking potentially, you know, a 20-run swing.
Yep. And yes,
just to add to that, it might actually make RCB play a bit differently, thinking of all those things. And that could play in Sunrisers' hands as well. You never know. You probably try and go a bit harder to get those extra 20, 25 runs. And end up getting 20 runs less than you should. So, yeah, whilst it's not the end of the game, it could be an important toss to win.
Yeah, I was going to come to that. Perhaps in the learning for us on our coverages on the last two pre-shows, we've not spent enough time talking about the due because that seems to be the only thing that the losing captain talks about at the end of the game. Now, we've seen that in Abu Dhabi and we've seen that in Dubai. We're going to assume it's going to just be the same at Sharjah, Ajit?
You think so because the weather's cooled down. There's no doubt. I mean, we've been, a lot of the times when we are not on commentary stands, you've been sitting out in the stands because it's so pleasant and there's always a breeze. So it certainly seems that way because even in Abu Dhabi, chasing wasn't easy like it has been for the majority of the tournament. A lot of teams prefer to bat first, but now it's a no-brainer. And even when the wicket, yesterday I saw the wicket and it looked a little bit. It was the same wicket that was used for the previous game. It looked a bit dry, but come
Yeah.
the evening, seems to play better, and that's got to be there's got to be a reason for that. And dew obviously is one of the big factors. So if that is the case, then it is a really good toss to win. They still have to play well, but it could be a good toss to win.
Tell me, Tom, at this stage of the tournament, I've always wondered, do teams actually watch the games on the eve of theirs or the day before? They know who their opposition is. They're also watching this due take a bigger and bigger role. Do you actually sit and watch and start thinking about, oh, okay, it's going to be a tough one if we're bowling second?
Absolutely. Most players can't help themselves but to keep an eye on what's happening with other teams and what's happening with the points table, and that win or that loss, how's that influence net run rate and their position on the points table. So particularly this stage of the tournament, everyone's pretty much fixed. So what you'll find are you'll get 2 or 3 players, 4 players will gather in one room and watch the game together and maybe have a meal together. Certainly from my point of view, I've quite regularly with support staff sort of watch the game together. And it's also a good learning as well because you're picking up on, particular playing styles and how people are adjusting to certain situations, how people are responding, reacting to certain challenges. So, it's constantly building your knowledge on your opponents.
Are there fast bowlers, Ajit, that are going to start training with bowling with a wet ball now?
They might already have. You never know because I'd be surprised if they haven't because it is a different skill that is required. It's never easy. It's not just the ball. Sometimes your spikes are wet. There's a lot of mud sometimes on your shoe where when you land, it's there's an odd occasion where it doesn't grip, and then you don't really have control at the crease, depending on how much dew there is, obviously. But the ball obviously is a big factor, and then to execute it under pressure, whether it's a Yorker, whatever your plans are, whether it's a slower ball, makes it even more challenging. So I'm sure the bowlers have already started practicing over the last couple of weeks for sure.
Take me through the drill, Tom.
Yeah, look, I would have thought most teams would have done it even pre-tournament. That the camps were pretty long, 3-4 weeks long. There would have been a couple of days that would have been allocated specific for due conditions for both the bowlers and batsmen to sort of get a feel for it. It's pretty simple drill, just a bucket of water, and you soak the balls. You give the bowlers what they would normally have on the field of play, and that's a hand towel to be able to dry it, to keep it as best they can. But you need to get it to a state where it's not ridiculously waterlogged, but you need to get it to a state where the seam is just a little bit slippery, and that's the real challenge for whether you're a pace bowler or a spinner. Just getting that grip and just, that you just lose that feel at the end of your fingertips. And that feel is so important when you're looking to pinpoint a Yorker or deliver a slow ball or whatever it may be. It also plays with you mentally, because you know that you don't have the same feel as you would, normally like to have. So those types of things are really important to rehearse, just so you're aware of the challenges and you've got some sort of strategy and some sort of bank to go back on.
Yeah, those are the two balls I wanted to talk to Ajit about too, the Yorker and the slow ball. You think theoretically that those are the toughest balls when the ball gets wet. Go back to Lockie Ferguson a couple of days back, so good at the Yorker and ends up bowling waist-high full tosses at just the wrong moment, against Jadeja, against CSK. Do you change your stock ball even though you're so good at the Yorker, Ajit? When you know dew is going to come in, do you start bowling differently? You prepare to start bowling differently?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because the best ball to bowl at that point could be a Yorker, could be a slow ball, depending on conditions, and you perhaps can't get it right. So then you start thinking you've got to go away from it. I mean, giving personal experience, I had a lot more difficulty with my landing when it was wet, the outfield, because I couldn't get my footing right, and then there was no control of where the ball went. And even if the ball was greasy, I was still a little bit okay. It might be different with different bowlers. So uh, yeah, you look, and then you put fields according to what you're trying to bowl. It can be, imagine bowling with a wet bar of soap. It's just hard work, but
Yeah.
it is something that you prepare for, and that's why you practice. And the feel at the end of the day, or that confidence that you've already done it, sometimes then your instincts take over, and your brain starts functioning in a certain way, that then you try and execute it. So that's the best you can do, as long as you prepare along the way. I think what ball you need to bowl generally happens, but then the practices become even more important going into the game.
The other very difficult thing, particularly for this match, is the size of the ground.
Yeah.
So your margin of error is very limited, even if you've got all the conditions in your favour. When you're playing in Sharjah and you've got, 60 metre boundaries on a good day, you only have to get it fractionally wrong and you can get seriously punished. So if you're running in with those small boundaries, plus the challenge of not having the control of the ball in your hand, the control of your foot marks at the crease, so you're balanced at delivery, all these things that are so important for a bowler. It is hard work, and at times it really depends on the bowler. At times you are better off just going a hard length, knowing that you've got better control over that. As long as you're maintaining a really straight line, you can't bowl hard length and provide width as well. And then you're asking the batsman to probably try to hit a harder shot for 4 or 6 than trying to bowl slot balls. It is a nightmare. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how both these teams deal with it.
Yeah, we spent so much time talking about the challenges for fast bowlers in the due, and cricketing wisdom tells you that the leg spinners will have it even harder, but they've got the two best in the tournament, Yuzvendra Chahal and Rashid Khan. So keep an eye out. These are two good bowling attacks. The one thing they've done is get their best bowling together, Bangalore. If we look at their team, Navdeep Saini returns. That's a change that Virat Kohli would welcome. And he also brings Isuru Udana back after 3 games out to replace Dale Steyn. It looked like Ajit Udana's use had gotten lesser and lesser, and they chopped around. First tried a Moeen Ali and then brought in Dale Steyn for the last game. You like this change, bringing Isuru Udana back?
I think so. As hard as it is for Dale Steyn, it just gives them a different option. Whether they use him for 4 overs or not, it might depend on the day. But it just gives them more variety in that attack. I mean, especially with Saini coming in as well. You've got pace there, right arm pace. Morris is there as well. So is Siraj. So it just gives them that different option. If need be, you can, left armers we've always seen. You can use angles differently, put different fields, and batsmen approach playing left armers differently. So it's always a good option to have. As tough as it is on Dale Steyn, sort of out again after 1 game. It looks a better balanced team, and they must be really happy with Saini's recovery. I mean, if to think that he torn a webbing or whatever the injury was, to recover as quickly as he has, because he's been a key player for them through the course of the season.
Yep, 6 bowling options in that case. They could have gone for anyone in that position, you think, Tom, any of their overseas guys, but they've taken a call that they'd rather have Isuru Udana.
Yeah, look, I think it's the right call as well. As Ajit said, he just provides a good point of difference with his left arm. He's got a good slower ball, can get the ball up there with his Yorkers, and he's no mug with the bat. So, he provides a little bit more depth in that batting order with Morris in front of him. So, that balance of that side looks absolutely spot on to me.
All right. There's a change for the Sunrisers. It's forced, it seems, with Vijay Shankar not having recovered from injury. So there's another opportunity for Abhishek Sharma, who Tom Moody rates pretty highly, and said he was surprised that he was dropped after that game against Rajasthan Royals mid-October in the first place. So Sharma comes in. That's the only change. Riddhiman Saha is fit. No other changes otherwise. You like that team, Tom?
Yeah, look, I think it's good to see Abhishek Sharma back in there for the reasons which I've supported for a while. I just think he's a really exciting talent. He also can find the boundaries, a natural ball hitter. And he can find the 4s and 6s as well as anyone. and he can lend himself some useful left arm spin and a bonus in the field. So Sunrisers, I don't think have lost a huge amount with Vijay Shankar out and Abhishek Sharma in. I think they're pretty much, because we've been a little bit disappointed with, I suppose, the consistency of both fitness and form of Vijay Shankar over not only this season but the previous season, where we expected a lot more of a player that has, he's reached the heights of as an Indian player, but hasn't quite got it together. So, look, it's a great opportunity for the young kid, and I'm sure he'll welcome it.
All right. The point Ajit made a little while earlier, the approach from the first innings team now after what's gone on in the tournament last couple of days. And Ajit, if we can elaborate on that a little more, now Dew is going to go against you in the second innings. You also know that this is a Sunrisers team that's high on confidence with the runs they got last game. The approach can at times be risky of being too hard, or do you still expect Padikkal and Josh Philippe to come out all guns blazing?
I think Padikkal's been very impressive, particularly that last innings against Mumbai Indians was really good to see. And Josh Philippe actually was a pleasant surprise at the top of the order. I mean, he looked busy, looked quite at home, and someone who's not played a lot of cricket. So I don't think they'll approach it any different way, or at least they shouldn't. It'll all see how the game evolves, and from then on, firstly, it'll depend on what the conditions are like, and there might be a day or there might be a night where there's no dew, so you can't have this sort of going into the game thinking that we are going to get 220. I mean, I don't think it will work that way. You still want to be aggressive. You still want to put pressure on the bowlers. Sunrisers is an attack where you can put pressure on them, so you still want to do that. But be smart about it and keep assessing as the conditions go along, which Kings 11 perhaps the other night didn't do in spite of getting 185. And because at some point, if the dew is going to come, you are bound to see it. I think the sun sets quite early here, so you are bound to see it. So you can assess it at that point and decide what a good score is and try and get to that.
What we saw in the earlier game today, Tom, Gautam Gambhir says this pretty often, you can't win the game in the first 6, but you can lose it. So now you're looking at a Bangalore team that's batting first. Can you be guilty of going too hard and finding yourself 20 for 3 in the power play? Do you at that time then go cautiously? But then there's the theory of, maybe I need to get 20 extra, looking what you've said, the dew coming in. So how do you balance that?
I think you approach it just, very simply, a ball at a time. You make your assessment of the conditions. It's not a given that the wicket is going to be a flat wicket. It's not a given that 220 is a total that is achievable. So you need to make those assessments, very quickly on the go. Be aware of where you want to be at the sixth over, and that may be, say, 50 runs, maybe your target, with minimal damage in the wicket column. But you might find that the opposition bowl poorly, and you might end up with 70. Or you also might find out that Rashid Khan bowls 2 overs in the power play, which is a surprise to you. So you don't really know what's going to unfold until it's presented, and then you need to be, I think, smart and nimble on your feet to be able to make those adjustments and just put yourself in a strong position. But they'll have a broad idea of where they want to be at the end of the 6th over, and I would have thought it'd be around that 50-run mark, and that just gives them a strong foundation to be able to make sure those last 15 overs are fruitful.
All right. Well, chasing seems to be the way to go. It has been the way to go in the last 3 games at Sharjah, but the last team to win their batting first was RCB against KKR when AB de Villiers transcended the conditions and played a heck of a knock. So keep an eye out on de Villiers against Rashid Khan. Should be a cracking contest. We'll come to that chat at halftime, but let's go back to the early game today. Delhi Capitals. Gee, where do they find themselves now? They find themselves in a very precarious position. Tom, it was a challenge to be Ricky Ponting earlier before the start of this game, at halftime. And now what's it like at full time?
Well, I'm sure really from about the 5th over onwards in that run chase, he was preparing his speech for after the match and just sort of thinking about, what are the real key points he needs to get through to this group. 4 losses in a row is a significant, I was going to say achievement. It's not an achievement, but a significant blow to the Delhi Capitals for a side that is a favoured side to win this year. The wheels have fallen off, and it is a concern. And I'm sure that Ricky Ponting and the senior players within that team have already had that sort of sit around the room discussion and open forum. And I'm sure, Ajit, you've been in many of those discussions over your playing career where, everyone will sort of, have their say on where they feel that, that the group can improve and what are the areas we need to concentrate on. So, do they do that all over again? I don't think so. It's probably something that they need to, if anything, get over this, because this is a significant loss. This isn't just a loss. This is a massive beating that Mumbai have inflicted on Delhi Capitals. So, they're probably better off just forgetting that and parking it and just really looking at how they can start that fire again, ignite that fire, which they had in the very early parts of that tournament where they looked like they were going to steamroll teams all the way through to the finals.
I can't understand this one, Ajit. Everyone fired together, and now everyone's misfiring together for Delhi.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't pick them in my top 4 at the start of the tournament. Not that I don't want them to qualify. It was always a bit of a question mark, isn't it? You don't quite know whether you can get consistent seasons from, say, a Prithvi Shaw, as talented as they are. Shreyas Iyer, you don't quite know. Big responsibility, having a full season as captain. Rishabh Pant, again, Rishabh Pant seems to be going backwards a little bit for the kind of talent that he has. And those three are such keys. I mean, Stoinis at the start of the tournament was a real key for them. Won them a few games on his own, which perhaps hits some of the weaknesses that they had, or some of the other guys who weren't playing quite well enough. Their bowling was doing good, which at this point, you can't blame them. Defending that kind of total, 110 today, you can't really blame the bowling if your batters are not going to get runs. And it's just the way they're playing at this point. Everyone, even Shreyas Iyer comes out to bat, and they score 20 odd of the first 6 overs with a couple down, him and Rishabh Pant batting. There doesn't seem, it's clearly a case of suddenly losing confidence and then too many doubts creeping in your mind about how to approach instead of letting your instincts take over. I mean, it's much easier said than done, I know. But at this stage, all you need is to somehow play that one game well, get that one victory, because that assures you a playoff spot at this stage. And somehow they can't seem to put a game together. And forget putting a game together, they seem to be going backward, which will be a real worry for them going into that next game.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Ajit. You can't blame the bowlers for today, but it does look like, Tom, it's not like we can only look at their batting and say it's misfiring. They're coming off a Sunrisers game where they essentially lost it with 220 being conceded. Rabada, who has this extraordinary run of taking a wicket in every game, he's now gone 2 games wicketless. Just pretty much everything has fallen apart for Delhi. Can you explain this? I don't remember teams that have fallen off the boil where everything seems to have gone off together in the IPL.
Yeah, look, it's gone from bad to worse, hasn't it? First the bowling was supporting the batting, and now the bowling is, I suppose, crumbled under the weight of the pressure that the batting's put that group under. It's very hard to put a finger on it, but I just wonder whether the moving chairs in their batting order in the early parts and the middle part of that tournament has really played havoc with the confidence of a relatively young top order. We've seen the likes of Hetmar at 3, we've seen Stoinis at 3, we've seen Iyer at 3. To me, that already, raised the red flag. Why is it that a side that is such a competent side and full of talent needs to be, making those significant changes? And in a way that can trigger that sort of loss of confidence and momentum in a team. Players like continuity. They like to feel that there is some sort of understanding of what their role is, so they can prepare for that mentally, prepare for that at training. But if that is unpredictable, there's that sort of uncertainty that can creep into the individual and then creep into the team. There's no excuse the way I see it. I think they've got the resources. I picked them, by the way, Ajit, in my top 4. I think they've got the resources
they do.
to be in the top 4. And as I've said previously in another one of these chats, I don't wear the excuse that this is a young side anymore. I think they've worn that tag for long enough. Come on, give me a break. These guys have played international cricket. to me, they've got one of the most exciting top order batting lists in the tournament. It's just they're all failing at the same time, except for we had a period where Shikhar Dhawan really let fly. And let's face it, he's a standout in that group because, he's in that sort of leading run scorers in the IPL, which he seems to be in that position on a regular basis.
All right.
The good part, Pranav, is if they win the next game, they still qualify, which is I suppose that they should look at it. Thankfully, for that early, really good form in this tournament, they put themselves in such a position that in spite of losing 4, they need to win just one game. It's not still dependent on the other results. I think if they win that next game, they qualify. So at least that's something to look forward to. That it's still in their hands and not somebody else's results.
Yep, fair point. We'll come back to Delhi when they have this, what should be a virtual playoff quarter-final, whatever you want to call it, against Bangalore, depending on how this result goes. As far as Mumbai Indians goes, Ajit, Rohit Sharma can still play with one foot, just toss the coin and go and sit down and dug out. I think they'll still win.
Yeah, I mean, that if you looked at all the other teams in this competition at the start and you felt all the other teams were a lot closer, if there was one standout team, it was Mumbai Indians. Just the depth that they have, quality all around, international quality, Indian players who are established Indian internationals, and experience now in the IPL as well. Just quality. I mean, you saw Bolt today, you saw Bumrah when the team needs it. So, sometimes it tells you as well, captaincy can be easy if you have a good team. I'm not saying it's easy. You still need to make the right decisions, but it's much easier to lead a team like Mumbai Indians than perhaps some of the other teams. So you still have to go out and perform, which the players seem to. And I like the attitude today as well. Having qualified, not taking the foot off, making sure you're making it even more difficult for Delhi Capitals, who, like Tom said, on paper have one of the better sides in this tournament. Put them under pressure is certainly a good performance.
The team to beat, Tom? Mumbai Indians, surely?
Yeah, without a doubt. And they still haven't got their best 11 on the field, and they're winning comfortably, which does sort of highlight the great depth they've got both domestically and internationally.
All right, that's a wrap. Tom Moody, you can take the rest of the evening off and keep an eye out on the Sunrisers. Thankfully, their result doesn't matter to you anymore, but I'm sure you're still rooting for your former side to get the job done. Tom?
Of course. It's going to be a good match. And, as I said, I think the likes of David Warner will be right up for it.
All right. Something tells me Tom's already sent him a text or something before this one. Thank you very much to Tom Moody. We'll get more from him tomorrow. There's a big game for Punjab, which Tom will join me for. Ajit, we'll pick up this conversation at halftime and see how much of an impact Dew is having in Sharjah. It's a big one, Bangalore against Hyderabad. So do join us for our mid-innings show on Whirlpool Presents ESPN Cricket 40 T20 Timeout, powered by Dell.